morning, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Betsy Frentz. I'm a member of the digital marketing team here at the Learning House, which is now a Wiley brand here in Louisville. We just have a few housekeeping announcements before we're going to introduce our next speakers. First, be sure to download the Guidebook app so you can follow along on your smartphone. It'll have the schedule and bios of all the speakers, and there's also a way to give feedback on all of the speakers and all of the sessions, which we would really appreciate. There are also two booths in the foyer that we want to draw your attention to. One that Todd mentioned both of them, but the first is the Wiley booth, which is an interactive setup where you can learn more about Wiley and all the ways we serve learners across the world. And then secondly, we have what we're calling a reputation table, where you can give a video testimonial about what you love about Connect, and you can also fill out a star and write a little note about what you've learned here this week. I think that is all for me, and now Wendy Parrish is going to come forward and introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm so excited for you all to hear from these next speakers and on the next topic of the Online College Student Survey. Dave Clinefelter has a broad and deep educational experience across both K-12 and higher ed. He has served as VPAA and president of Graceland University, provost of Kaplan University, chief academic officer at Walden University, and my favorite were his 5 years as chief academic officer at the Learning House. We love seeing him here and are excited to hear from him. Carol Aslanian is also, I've worked with her for a long time, just a breadth of knowledge all about higher education and trends in the marketplace. She is founder and president of Aslanian Market Research, and it is a national authority on the characteristics and learning patterns of adult and post-traditional undergraduate and graduate students. She's made hundreds of presentations and has authored numerous articles and reports on the topic. For more than 20 years, she worked at the College Board in support of adult learning services. So welcome, Carol and Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. Mic's on. Carol and I are delighted to be here with you folks and share this session. We've been doing the online college survey for 8 years now. 8 years. 8 years. And so every year it changes a little bit. We add new questions. This year especially, there's several new topics that are explored that I think you'll find interesting. We're going to, because of the arrangement of this room, it's going to be difficult to take questions as we go. So we're going to take about 45 minutes, go through the basic presentation, and then allow 15 or 20 minutes for you folks to ask questions afterwards. So make a note if something goes by on one of the slides. We'll have a mic at the back of the room so everybody can hear the questions as they come. I'm going to start with just a little bit of kind of prep and context. Think about, if you would, the university or institution where you currently work when it offered its first online degree program. So you might not have been there then, but if you know the history of your institution, if you would, get in mind, I think it was 2015, just a few years ago, or it was 2010 when we did our first online degree at such and such university. Got it in your mind? Good. I want to show you this timeline of the development of online education. Back in 1998, there were only 78,000 students taking online classes, about 20 years ago. The reason for that was that the Department of Ed had restrictions on how many classes a student could take online and how many institutions could offer and how many students at a particular institution. It was called the 50% rule. Some of you are shaking your heads, you know this rule, you ran into it. I bumped into it when I was at Graceland and was frustrated by it. Luckily, in '98, the Department of Ed started a program called the Distance Education Demonstration Project, large mouthful. They allowed 15 institutions to violate that rule, basically. No restrictions, enroll as many as you want, no 50% limit. And then a few years later, they bumped it up to 24 institutions. So those 24 institutions from '98 to 2006 had grown that enrollment quite a bit to 1,200,000 students. Only 24 institutions running fully online, as many as you want. That was places like University of Phoenix, University of Maryland, University College, Thomas Edison. Those kinds of institutions really kind of demonstrated, and the demonstration project worked, that online could work for students. It was helpful and useful, and many, many people wanted that opportunity. So in '06, when they redid the Higher Ed Authorization Act, they eliminated that rule and threw the gates wide open. You can take as many students as you want. So at that point, a number of public institutions, about '06, '07, '08, started their first online degree programs. And there were a bunch of entrepreneurial, private, independent institutions, the nonprofits, that also jumped in at this time. It was kind of like the Wild West. So anybody here work at an institution that was part of that original demonstration project and had online programs before '06? Yes, a Kaplan person, yeah. How about in this time period from '06 to 2010? Anybody at an institution that started your online programs then? A few over here? Yeah, about 10 or 15 people go back that far. How about from 2010 to 14 then, that 4-year period? Anybody, institutions? Yeah. And how about since 14? Anybody that started in the last 6 years, 7 years? More and more hands are coming up. So you can see what happened. Once they opened that floodgate, people jumped in and started offering. There's no data available on how many institutions were involved at that point, but you can see what happened to the enrollment. The enrollment jumped from 1 million to 4 years later, about 2.5 million students fully online. 45% in the publics, 43% in the for-profits institutions, and it's just 12% in those entrepreneurial nonprofits. And then look what happened in that next 4-year span. The for-profits got crushed for a number of reasons, but they lost tremendous market share. They all started shrinking, and the nonprofit private sector grew quite a bit from 12 to 22. The public institutions still serving about half of the online college students, but the for-profits are down to 28. And then in the last 3 years that we have data for, that trend continues. The nonprofit private institutions are continuing to grow quite a bit, take market share from the for-profits, and a little bit of growth in the publics. And then down here you have the number of institutions that are offering online programs. The public institutions clearly lead that group. Almost all of the publics have at least one fully online degree program. Only about half of the independent private colleges and universities have fully online degree programs. So as you would predict in the future, that's where more of the growth is going to come in terms of the number of institutions that are doing online programs. So the question is, what do we do next? You know, the competition is increasing. The for-profits are kind of lagging right now, but they're still a substantial part. That's the purpose of the online college student survey, is to give you information about student preferences, characteristics, desires, that you as leaders in those institutions can position the institution. Carol's going to give you just a little bit now of how the study is organized, the methodology.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. And I just want to make one point about that earlier slide. I was at the University of Phoenix board meeting in 2010 when the CEO announced fall enrollment of 485,000 students. A lot of students. By 2018, down to about 120,000. So you can see the immense impact you've all made on that particular sector of higher education by your activity and involvement. Okay, the methodology. We surveyed, as we have done for the last 8 years, and as Aslanian Market Research does 30 of these regional surveys every year, we have a national sample of 1,500 respondents. I can go into the details of how it comes from an annual, a nationwide panel that's privately selected and characterized, but I can talk to you about that later. I just got the big blurb on how we do it, because you all want to know how those 1,500 are selected. But it's a good, reliable sample, and we use the same technique when we work with an institution regionally. The respondents are very important in this survey. We got to make sure that we're getting the right, reliable, dependable answers. So they have to be able to say, yes, I enrolled in a fully online degree, certificate, or licensure program in the last 3 years. I am currently enrolled, or I really have firm plans to enroll in the next year. Firm plans, we ask them the institution and the topic of study. And they have to be 18 years of age and older, not 25 and older, like that old adult market concept. And as Dave showed nicely earlier, or an earlier slide showed, we're getting younger and younger. So 18 or older, and they have to have a high school diploma. Then we'll speak to you. Why? Because we focus on demand and not need. We're not going to ask you where you'd like to go for your vacation next summer. We're going to ask you, where did you go? Because that's far more reliable for planning and figuring out what to offer, where, when, and how to what population. So this is a demand study and not a needs assessment.
So some key findings then from the study this year. You can get the full report downloaded. It's free on the website, either one of our websites, and use it. Carol.
Okay, let me go. We're going back and forth, but sometimes we need a little coaching on this. Okay, demographics. Well, the median income, and this is family household income, is $55,000, which is about right at the same point as the national average of family income. So you're getting a typical American family coming into this program. 64, 2/3 are of white background, and that's typical in many of your own programs. 65%, 2 out of 3 are of a white background. 60% are female, and I think, as Todd might have pointed out earlier, just slightly less than, it's getting less and less female. We used to say in the old days, where are the men? What are they doing? Because, you know, adult education, lifelong learning was dominated by women to 65, 70%. One answer to that was that, you know, women are enter professions where you need continuous training and developments, education, social sciences, counseling, and so forth. But now, as I think we mentioned earlier, the men are a little bit more active in online education than they are typically at an older age. 60% have no children, another pointer that shows you we're getting younger in our population. And nearly 60% are employed full-time, very busy people, but if you take another 20 or 30%, they're part-time, so we have a working population. And 55% are single. So when you profile your advertising, when you send your messages out, this is who you're trying to attract. And the average age is 31.8. You all think it's 33, 34, 35. It's getting younger and younger over time. And 30% are first generation. Okay, I think that's going to increase. And so your programs and procedures need to account for that as well. And 60% no children. Did I say that? Okay.
Yeah. Online is complex. So Gen Z, this was an eye-opener for me when I saw the Pew Trust report about generations and so forth. They described Gen Z as these people that grew up always having access to an iPhone. And my story is my grandson Noah, I was putting him to bed one night, and he said, "Grandpa, look at this, it's really cool." And he whipped out his mom's iPad, logged in, and showed me a video about the science guy explaining where money comes from. He's really interested in money now. Every time I see him, he tells me how big his bank account is, you know. And I thought, this is interesting. These folks did a survey. The Gen Z people, if you go to them and say, what's your preferred way to learn? Where do you go if you want to learn something? YouTube. All right, it's not textbooks, it's not books, and so forth. But how about the millennials? A lot of people in this room are in this generation, the Gen X people, ages 39 to 54, and then the boomers, where I am. Think about the fact, the boomers, if you ask me where I go to learn, I'll grab a book, right? In many cases, it'll be a real book, not an e-book. So the problem is, all of those are in your class. And you're dealing with all these generations. If you're a typical traditional campus, you're not going to have to deal with that range of age groups and backgrounds where they came from. As Carol said, a third are first generation, 13% have no prior college. Many of these people are going right from high school to online college and skipping the campus. Different kind of learner. than somebody who's been older, out of school for 3 to 5 years. So in the kind of understanding of all this data together, this is a very complex kind of market that or group of people that you're trying to serve. They have very different needs, interests, backgrounds. But if you're a professor, you might get all these people with these characteristics in the same classroom.
You know, Dave, that could be explained by the fact is that 60% of students today do not finish in 4 or 6 years. Guess what happens? 60% don't finish undergraduate. They go off and work for a few years, they get married, and then they say, oh my gosh, I got to get that degree, or I'm not going to get that promotion, and so forth. So that delay is largely due to the fact they never finished the first time, and because they didn't know what they wanted to study, where they wanted to work, and so forth.
Girl.
Okay, so why do they need convenience? You know, practical, easy to get to and learn from. 60% employed. That's a lot. Okay, 60% employed, 41% of parents. Can you imagine? We all know what it's like being employed and being a parent. And whoops, go back one.
Yep, sorry.
And 71% enrolled full-time. I explained to my colleges, how can they be enrolled full-time when they have all these complex personal roles? The answer is very simple. You make it easy for them. Back-to-back courses over 12 months, 6 weeks preferred, maybe 8 weeks in duration. That's how they can do full-time study. And the need for this convenience is growing. Look at that first light green mark, tuition for my preferred. Which statement best describes the tuition situation to how you made your enrollment decision? The two most popular, which you should read, is tuition for my preferred program is higher, but it was convenient, its format, schedule, and location. Convenience, convenience, convenience. We've heard that a lot. And tuition for my program is the lowest among the programs I evaluated, so you got to split there. Some of them will pay anything to get what they want at the right time, the right place, and the right schedule, and some of them are very concerned about cost. I think that's the #1 item on all our surveys about what's first on your mind. And then you've got about 30% is higher, but they had what I wanted, and the reputation was what I wanted. So you have to determine what your approach is and what your slogans are depending on your competition. And if you're a private, you have to think of it one way. If you're a public, you think of it another way. Cost continues as a factor. #1 selection factor is what is tied to the reputation and the cost of the institution. 20% that figuring out how to fund tuition was the hardest part of enrolling in a program. And that's what we learn when we do surveys of students who apply but don't, who inquire but don't apply, who apply but don't enroll. You're not giving them enough help on how they're going to figure out their financial situation. They say financial information comes after we've been accepted and it's too late. And 1/3 selected the least expensive school. So 2/3 of you, many of you are privates, I know in this room. So there are ways to overcome your private, more higher price institutions through the convenience factors. And here's a great one, where we find over and over again in our regional surveys. We say, just you're a private institution, you're kind of higher price than your neighbors, give them a $500 scholarship. Do you understand that was the #1 rated factor that would make a difference in their opinion of where to go? Why? She goes home, he goes home to his husband or wife, and they say, guess what? That institution is going to give me a $500 scholarship. It sounds good, it feels good, and the kids or your children are impressed. So I was always surprised at that factor, but it's true. Type of program? Good. Undergraduate. It's degree, degree, degree. At the graduate, it's degree, degree, degree. I've been waiting for the certificate programs to grow and grow. They're still fairly stable, but I have noticed lately that the elite selective institutions like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, a lot of them are beginning to get their feet wet by what types of programs? Certificates. So that may be rising in number in the years to come as they become more active in that field. Program of study, let's look at the differences in the last 5 years undergraduate. You know, business is business is business is business, okay. However, I can add a little note here from what we've learned recently. It's not just the MBA they want. They want an MBA with a concentration. They want to say, here's my MBA, and I have focused on marketing or accounting or international relations or whatever it is. They need those concentrations because an MBA, everybody's getting an MBA. Okay, health and medicine, declining a bit. A lot of that was nursing. I'm wondering why that's true. Computers and IT remain the same. I'm surprised at the undergraduate level that that's not increasing. And the social sciences are increasing or relatively staying the same. Look at the graduate level. It's business, business, business. Health and medicine hasn't changed, but graduate computers and IT is mounting higher and higher, and that's true in all our regional surveys as well. And we go down the list. You can read that. Except for this one. At the graduate level, education and teaching has really gone down. How many see it in their own state? Lots to do with the regulations of the State Department not requiring the continuing education that would get you a bigger raise or a higher position. So, right, education and teaching is a downer right now.
These are two, arts and humanities, undergrad, and science, the STEM fields are growing. We look at a 10% change before we think it's significant given the size of our sample population. So we're not calling those out as there was a significant change in these two fields, but we're watching them because we think that trend could continue and you'll get that 10% jump. So those seem to be emerging.
Right, I feel that in our area surveys as well.
Sure.
Number of schools considered. From all students, the average is about 2.47, but let's look at the undergraduate market. 30% of undergraduates contact or request from one institution. What does that mean to you? You better be on the ball. You can't wait 5 minutes. You got to be there in 1 minute. You are the institution that they want. You're the only one. If you don't come fast enough, guess what? They'll go and hunt elsewhere. So that's very important that 28% will, at the undergraduate level, only search out one school. At the graduate level, it's 17%, and then so on and so forth. On average, what would be the average here, Dave? I guess that the line here, all students, 2.4, 2.3, that's not very many. And guess what? You'll see later what Dave's going to tell you. They're all in your neighborhood. So you've got to know what your competition is doing because it's all closer than farther away. You're not competing with the Phoenixes and the Capellas and the Arizonas as much as your own neighbors.
This trend is downward. I mean, the number of students only applying to one place or inquiring at one place is dropping. It's steadily going down because more and more universities are offering programs, but it's still a pretty big number and a nice advantage for folks. So moving on, distance to campus keeps shrinking. When we first started, as Todd mentioned in his opening remarks, a pretty big chunk were 100 miles, within 100 miles or more, and now that's dropped down to 67% here are within purple 50 miles from home. So as more and more institutions, go back to that timeline I started with, start offering programs, they have 2 or 3 options locally, they're going to take the local option in most cases because they know the institution, it feels comfortable, their brother went there, et cetera, et cetera. So competition's increasing and people are staying close to home. This will be a trend we'll pick up on a couple times throughout the presentation.
Let me add one little point here. I'm mesmerized by this finding. They really aren't outside their own environment, which is a plus for you. Many of you are smaller local institutions, but also it confines your competition to a smaller area. I was at Facebook the other day. We were talking to a number of schools, and what does Facebook do if you're involved in Facebook and you buy Facebook leads? What happens to Facebook, which looks for a national market for you, right? How do they concentrate locally, or how do your vendors concentrate in a way so they maximize your near area versus, you're in Massachusetts and you're looking at Oregon for enrollments. Not something to think about.
I think this slide speaks for itself. They want mobile. They want to go mobile. We've asked that question several years. It keeps increasing. Look at the age breakdown, though. You've got a problem with the older people, again, aren't as interested in mobile. But look at the purple. This is one you want to pay attention to. They wanted to go mobile, use mobile, but the institution didn't give them the opportunity. If your LMS doesn't support mobile or your website, I think you're at a big disadvantage. So something to pay attention to.
All right, how do they select the schools in which to apply or get information from, the 2 or maybe 3 that they do? Most often through online reviews. Are you well represented as an institution that can offer what they want online? That's the first thing you need to be concerned with. College search sites, e-learners, Classes USA, et cetera, 33%. So they still are using these to a greater extent than I would have imagined, given their local interests. So it's hard to rationalize that, but it's true. Recommendations make your students happy, 30% of them. Rely on friends and family to tell them where to go next, or their employers, better yet. College fairs or events, yeah, no. Community college I attended, no, not really. Direct mail is gone, gone, gone. And emails from the school, not very effective. And we move on to lower and lower. TV commercials about the school. You'll see that the big providers, be it Purdue or others, are using a lot of television. In Southern New Hampshire, I can't go to any site I travel in the United States without seeing Southern New Hampshire. But it doesn't look like many of them are convinced by this route, and so on and so forth down that line. The big ones are mentioned earlier.
This was a new topic we explored this year about soft skills. You know, employers are all saying we want people that can do this, and we always see these surveys where employers say, we're getting these new employees out of college, and they can't write, they can't think, they can't do this, over and over again. So we asked this questions, did your institution, your online program, teach you these things? We picked out six or seven skills that usually show up on these surveys, right? And about half of them said, yeah, that was part of my program. They taught me these things. But look what happened when we asked them, did you improve? Did your skill in time management, attention to detail, writing skills, critical thinking get better? And a whopping 85% said, yeah, I got better. Huge opportunity here, I think, for you guys to claim victory. Say, we're preparing these people for the skills that employers are looking for. A nice opportunity, too, to call this out in your program. When you teach those things, if you're not teaching them deliberately, build it in, and then point out to the students, hey, this is what you're learning, so put it on your resume, give them badges, do something to verify that they're acquiring these skills, and tell them how important it is in the workplace for their prospective employers.
Dave, not only that, how many of you contract with business locally? Service business locally? Provide education and training to local institutions? Well, that was practically nobody. What a great way to market your skills and reputation and what you can offer employees, but to tell the employers in your area, like we worked with Concordia up in Wisconsin, you know the major industries in Wisconsin, and they want more of this. So go out and reach out and give them a little benefit to your tuition costs, and they'll come in if you can tell them you're giving the public, their employees, what they want them to learn. Great way for a connection. Okay, here I go. Career services. I don't want to say how many years I've been in this business, but for the many years I've been in looking at market data for individual colleges in different regions of the country, and career services never came up. It was not a big deal. Why? We thought they were working, they know where they are, they want advancement, they're not looking for a new job. But look at here. They do want it in this online market. So I think it has a lot to do, Dave, probably with age. They're in a job, they've been there a couple of years, but you know, if you have children of working age, you know, you ask them one day where they're working and 2 days later they're someplace else. So these people in the online programs, the population getting younger and younger, also means that they want services to look for new occupations, new higher paying jobs, and all these other factors. Go ahead.
Excuse me, first generation students use career services significantly more than other students. So if you have the 30% that are first generation in your population, think about emphasizing that. Minority students too, in the national surveys, tend to use career services quite a bit more. Interesting to point out though, this column didn't use. Every time we do a survey like this, there's a significant population that doesn't want the service. And so you're almost never going to find something where it's unanimous or 90-95% want that particular service. A bunch of students don't care, but here's the problem. If you're one of these institutions that doesn't offer it, I think when they want it this much, you ought to think about how you make that available to your students.
But also it could be that the institutions are not promoting it and they don't know enough that it's to their advantage as an online student, which is off the beaten track a bit. And maybe if you pronounce these services as part of your marketing message, it would ring a good bell.
So I was reading through the Chronicle one day and I saw this article about a university in Colorado that was supplying support services to their residential students in an online format. And it was these services. They were providing study skills development, time management, health issues, mental health, so forth. They had some program that they had developed so that all their campus students could access these services online. Made me think, I wonder about these online students themselves. So we asked this question in the survey, and I was taken aback by the response that so many people said, yeah, we're using these services. So I can get my clicker to work. The purple line on the left there, a lot of them are already using these kind of services, but look at the blue line down the middle here. They would use them if they were offered.
Right.
These people, we've always thought about these online students as kind of being different. They're adults, they know what they're doing, they don't need career advice and so forth. But I think it's time to change our mental attitude a little bit about what these students want, what they need, what kind of services they would use.
And it's interesting because I think you all offer some or all of these services, but you're not making the message clear to your online students because you didn't know that it would also influence them. And don't forget, 70% of them are in your backyard. So they can take advantage of these services better than a student 800 miles away. Very important incentive to come to you and not others. Hurdles in enrollment, okay. The most difficult part of the enrollment process happens to be completing financial aid forms, and we know that. I know that because we do studies of lost applicants and lost admittees, and what they say is, I can't get through the financial forms. It's too complicated. I'm getting no help from the college. I call back and they say, do this or do that. So, you know, guide them. Every enrollment in a private institution brings in what, $15,000 or $20,000 a year? Multiply that times 3 or 4 years, you're getting a $60,000 to $80,000 product. Would it be great to help them with figuring out how to pay for it? Sure. It's the return on the investment. We spend far less money recruiting and marketing to these students than they bring us as revenue. So that's important to consider. Determining how to pay for college. How many people give financial aid awards after the student is admitted? Come on. How many do it as they're being considered? Well, there's no answer. Most of you do it afterwards, and that's not what they want. They're making decisions. Guess what? On that factor, how do I pay for this? Are you going to help me or not? And I can't wait till you admit me. I'm getting better news from another institution. Oh, no, I got to do this one. Getting transcripts. How many people use a private resource that you pay for to gather the transcripts of the applicants? What a great idea, Carol. Okay, you do. Who do you use? Who? Wiley. Wiley does this. Great, use it. There's nothing that handicaps an applicant more than going to find the old transcripts. Do it for them. There are companies that charge $3 or $4. Why spend their time not for... Is getting transcripts a huge problem in completing applications? Yes. Okay.
Carol, we're at the 10-minute mark, so we got to keep
Okay.
moving.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Those are so minor.
Those are, yeah, they go down and down the list.
So learning outcomes, again, we asked some new questions this year, and here's one of those areas, contrary to what I just said, where we get huge response. I mean, 80% on the right column there are saying things like, course was interesting and compelling. I'm confident that I got skills to be successful in the workplace. It's interesting when we ask questions about their actual program and their instructors, how good they feel about that program. This question, just point out this one. One professor or somebody talked to me about career options. That same question comes out of the Gallup survey, and they found that if you get a positive response here, the students feel much more prepared and successful to go on to the workplace, and they feel better about the institution. So just have one person talk to them sometime about career services, and if you have career service options, easy way to do it.
Right.
So perceived value, this is kind of I think it's a slide that's tilted a little bit because these are people that finished an online degree program. So they're big proponents and they're champions of it, but they feel really good about the program, thought it was worth the time and money if they complete their program online. Those are better numbers than traditional students, feel about their programs when they finish. And last big question here. This was, again, a new question we got into about alumni. And again, we were surprised by this data that these people want to be affiliated with their alma mater. And we need to change our thinking a little bit about those online students come, they get their degree, and they leave, and we never see them again. They want to refer students. They plan on taking more classes. They'll actually donate and give money. They'll join the Alumni Association. Whole different way to think about these particular people. I was talking with somebody at breakfast who works in one of the Wiley institutions, and she said, yeah, we have online students that are in the band. These people want to participate. They're local. They can do that. That was the stunning that's the headline to me, that online students join the band. Think about it. Couple trends to watch. We think that STEM and humanities is going to go up, as we said. Where are the males? Maybe they're coming back in stronger numbers. And this is the one that's really interesting for me. 10% Hispanics, way more than that going to college now. The percentage of Hispanic students in the undergrad programs in the age group is really going up fast. We're not seeing it online yet, but if you're an institution that's positioned that way, I think it's something to really think about, because they're coming and they'll be here before too long, I think.
I think by 1945, we'll be majority minority. Latest I saw.
We got time for a couple questions. Is there a mic at the back? Do we have a mic that somebody said they could bring the roving mic back, or is the mic up here? Question right here? Yep. You wake your way to meet each other where the microphone is there, okay?
There, thank you. I'm MB Kurilka. I'm from Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I had a question in the slide when you were talking about support services. You had this big blue section where it said students would take advantage if they were available. So those are pretty substantial, and I'm wondering, is it that, because pretty much all schools offer those services, is it that the student is not aware of them and they're just responding like, well, if they were available? Do you know what I mean? You're not, I guess you're not sure.
I don't think they make them available or noticeceable to online students.
Well, I think probably noticeable, because
Right.
isn't,
They're there.
they're there, are they
Right.
not? I mean,
But-
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And we of course, I mean, obviously after last year's, or the year before, every year you do this, we kind of say,
Yeah.
what are we going to do differently, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things we did was focus much more on, career services
Right.
and support and things like that. So that was it. I just wanted to know
Yeah.
if it was just the students, like if they were there, I'd take avail, but they are there. They just don't know about them.
And
Right.
don't-
Again, most of the students live within 50 miles.
Right.
I'm not sure who's going to drive 50 miles to meet an advisor necessarily. But there's also a lot of online students that are far enough away they're not going to do that.
Or
So I
virtual.
would think about offering those kinds of services in an online
Yes.
format where students anywhere can take advantage of it, because it looks like they're interested and they would use it. And that may be a distinguishing quality of your institution if you provide those.
And when they say, and your administrators say we can't afford that to do this with all those students, you can say, well, look what they're bringing into us and what we're spending to attract them.
Yeah, the theme of this presentation, I think, is these online students now are regular,
Yeah.
full-fledged college students, and they want everything everybody else gets. Is kind
Because
of the
they're
takeaway.
younger, Dave. A good reason is they're getting younger and they're accustomed to having it in that place they just left.
Another question? Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Angela Hernquist from CSU Global. My question was about the methodology, and you touched on it just really quickly, but most people take a quick glance at this and go 1,500 respondents, and so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about that.
There's a great paragraph that describes it, and it's an agency that we have worked with. I've worked with them at the College Board for 30 years. They're incredible, and it's a national sample it's a panel selection nationally by characteristics, and if you give me your card, I'll send you this big fat description. But I think that's good. The information isn't sort of out of wax or anything like that. And I use it for all my local surveys. So we have a lot of documentation. But give me your card and I'll send you the full different
Just
description.
to piggyback on that, we're reading a lot of surveys these days about political campaigns and who's ahead and who's not ahead. 1,500 is the standard for a national sample in the United States to get you to 2 to 3% level of reliability.
Right.
So 1,500 is a big number. Very few surveys go to that extent to get a national sample that's representative of the whole country. And we use a 10% break or significance level before we say there was a significant change or a significant difference between two numbers. So
Right. Good point.
you can rely on the findings in that sense. Carol, I think we need to wrap up here because they want to get some announcements and get ready for lunch. So,
I thought we were on to 11:30, no?
no.
Okay. A few more?
Okay. We have time for a few more questions, I guess. I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Anybody else?
Maybe
Comment?
your
Maybe
concluding
that
remarks were
stifled
too good.
discussion enough.
Okay. We'll be around.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here.
Yes. Beautiful.
Thank you.